gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for December 23rd, 2022. I've already messed up. January 23rd, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game S Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Microsoft finally responds to worrying Halo rumors, and it turns out that a TV show is good marketing for a video game. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host, the Game S Mornings. It's Kahlief Adams from SpawnOnMe. Ka, how are you doing?
Happy New Year. December 2022 is back in full effect. We are going
Run it back. We're doing Christmas again, everybody. We didn't do very good last time. Jeff Grubb wants to do it again.
The numbers for Q4 were low. We're going back.
We're going back. Consumer spending needs to pick up. Need a few more days.
I'm so happy to be with you, fam. It's so good to see you. It's been a minute since we had a chance to hang out and talk.
Yeah, it's been more than a year, I think, since I had a legit conversation with you. So yeah, I'm really happy to talk with you. I am aware that you got something happen over on SpawnOnMe. One of the reasons I want to talk to you, you're doing the Spawnies again. You did this last year. You guys are running it back again this year. How's that going?
Running it back. Year 2 is coming through. We're gonna call it Spawnies 2 Chicago Boogaloo. It's gonna be dope. We're gonna make it happen on January 30th, 6 p.m. PST at twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe. So you'll be able to come through and hang out with me and Rihanna Manuel Pena, and we'll be doing our version of the game of the year, but in January, right when you need it. Actually, forget all those other shows that happened in the actual year that they took place. We do it at least a month afterward, to make sure that you had some time to get all the other gaming award shows out of your body. So we had to hit it with that.
Yeah, I mean, every other industry does wait well into the next year before they do their awards. Usually, it's just gaming's like we got to get this done before the year's actually over. We're so weird. But do you think having that extra time gives you a little bit of a benefit of we really got a chance to look back, let things settle? People are already moving on to new games in 2023, so now we can take a deep breath and be more reflective on what 22 actually was.
Yes and no. I think it gives us the ability, post show to say okay, so how do we want to kind of figure out what the next layer is for year 3 when we do it again next year? I think the one thing that we always find ourselves as in kind of a nuts and bolts on how you build a show kind of thing, you wind up having this artificial time frame, right? Where you have to kind of balance out when games are going to be coming out. You have to balance out when studios are going to close for the holiday break. And then you have to try to figure out and backfill time to say, okay, well, we did something really new this year. Last year, we did voting between Rihanna and myself for all the nominees and for the games. This year, we partnered with this really dope technology crew called Grubb Labs, and they do a lot of Twitch extensions and really fun stuff there. And they helped us do fan voting for the first year. So all the nominees are from fans. All the winners are from the fans. Rihanna and I didn't pick anything in terms of the games or the winners this year. Awesome. And that changes your time frame too, about how many games you can ask for. We wind up missing stuff like God of War this year. It wasn't in terms of the voting that we got. But of course we know it's one of the biggest games of the year. So we wind up missing some pieces here and there just because of learning how to build a show and also time framing it so that, you can get people their awards and get acceptance speeches back and all that kind of stuff. So we're learning from year to year of how to figure out what's the best time frame to knock it out, because you don't want to miss those late December games, but sometimes you kind of have to get it into January.
Yeah, totally. It sounds like a lot of work though. I mean, it sounds like what you're doing is a considerable effort, and it's not like you have this massive Jeff Keighley's got his Oompa Loompas and a whole crew of just like little Canadians up from where he's from and just like working on it. I'm sure. Well, I mean, you don't have that, right? It's mostly you.
It's basically like two or three people basically. Yeah. It's like me, the editor. I bug Rihanna to come in and be like, "Can you help me think about this?" From time to time, and then we have some co-conspirators who help us do other stuff around the space. But it really is basically me doing this with a 9-to-5 job and running SpawnOnMe, where we just hit our 10th year this year. So it's a lot of stuff working in the background to try to make a show that's really fun and feels like it's for the culture and feels like it's filling a fun gap within the kind of gaming award show space.
Three more things. One, is there still time to give me an award and put it in the show?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I don't want to bring up a grievance as I come onto the show.
Uh-oh.
But first of all, you can't, as a bald man, you can't cut off a whole bunch of hair and then not give it to me. That's the first of all.
It's literally in a bag at another bald man's house right now. That's not a work. That's true. That's just actually what's happening.
Now we know that there is some stuff going on with Jeff Grubb's lost hair. It is not lost. It is just not found.
We know where it is. It's got the GPS tracker on it and everything. Don't worry about that.
Oh, that's amazing. But again, it's like, how do you figure out how to build all those things together and make sure they work right? And how do they kind of connect and all that stuff? But it is a lot of work. It is not easy to do it as a one person, because you need money too. You gotta pay for that stuff and pay for talent and all that kind of stuff.
The two other things. What one game of the year you just want to tell me right now? Can we break the news right now?
Oh yeah, it was God of War.
Yes, there you go.
God of War won Game of the Year. Yep. Everybody who was going to watch it, I'm sorry, I just broke it.
Yeah, totally.
So God of War is the winner for Game of the Year.
And then when and where can people watch it?
January 30th, so that'll be Monday. That's next Monday. You can watch it at twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe. It'll be airing at 6 p.m. PST, so East Coasters, I'm sorry. It's a little bit late. But the good thing is our show won't be like 3 hours. It'll be like less than, it'll probably round out around 2. So you'll be able to go to bed around 11:30 and be happy. Because we'll do the main show, and then we have a 30-minute post show where we talk about some of the experiences of building the show and how it went and all that cool stuff. So I definitely want people to come through. I think we had a really fantastic showing in our first year. We almost had like 350,000 people watch it for our first effort. It was really, really good, and we're hoping to double those numbers and bring some real fun to the conversation. So excited for everybody to come through, and GB fan, we always love y'all, so definitely come through and come rock.
I guess that does bring up one last. If it does grow, like what's the goal? Like what down the line when you're looking 5 years in the future? Like what are the spawnies?
I would love to have a really fully live show. Like, everybody comes out to a place, we do the red carpet, we do all that kind of stuff. That's the hope and idea. It really just depends on can you build it from year to year from a just like nuts and bolts and financial stability standpoint. Luckily, we have some dope sponsors this year. Xbox and Twitch are sponsoring it, and Zynga and their Black Resource dev group is there. Their ERG is there too, supporting us this year. But it takes a lot of those kinds of efforts to get the show to kind of make sure that it has a good space to live, so that, I have a quality bar, you have a quality bar of like what you think a thing is going to be in your head. And if you are starting to sway from that because you can't get some of those things in line, then it's not as worth for me to do that for the audience in that way. I want them to really capture it and be like, this is something new, this is something different. We haven't seen a conversation like this in a gaming show that's like trying to spotlight under represented developers and things like that. So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of fun, and I think we have a really fun and interesting show that no one else has been able to do yet. If you
do a live show and video game gods willing, I haven't been canceled by then, I want to be on the show. No, I don't want to give out an award. Just make me like, what is it called when you take someone down to the aisle? I want to say pallbearer. That's not right. That's not right, Ka. That's not the right word.
You're a seat usher.
Yes, usher. Yes, exactly. But I want to be a seat filler / usher.
I don't want anybody to die at this Spawnies show.
Here's our official pallbearer, just in case. And I'm just sitting there to the side because you just cut to me. That'd be good.
Or if we do have you as a pallbearer, we have to do it like the meme of the African cats who are doing the dance with the with the coffins. Like we got to get the whole crew to come down the aisle.
Damn.
Or we got to do it. Oh my God! Or we got to do it Undertaker style. We have to do it that way. Yeah. We need the purple smoke to come through.
I love it. God, thank you so much for joining me. Let's get into this mess. Before we do so, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on GiantBomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Halo dev 343 Industries has not been taking off the series, according to the studio. This comes from Evan Campbell at GameSpot. Following a large round of layoffs and rumors regarding the future of the Halo series, developer 343 Industries has revealed it is still working on Halo and the Master Chief story. A report from last week stated 343 would no longer make Halo games, instead overseeing external partners working on the franchise. This led to the official Halo account on Twitter putting out a public response. And this is a quote from the studio. Halo and Master Chief are here to stay, Heinz said. I believe this is like who the quote is from. 343 Industries will continue to develop Halo now and in the future, including epic stories, multiplayer, and more of what makes Halo great. However, that's the end of the quote. However, it's still up to interpretation regarding what 343 will be doing with Halo now. Certain Affinity is rumored to be developing a mysterious new mode for the first-person shooter, and that's one of the big things that people are like looking forward to. Beyond that, though, I said this last week when I talked about this story, and Ben Hansen is like, Jeff, do you think this is true? I'm like, I think elements of that original report probably are true. I mean, clearly we see that there's turmoil at 343. I don't think that they were never ever going to develop a single player narrative Halo game inside of 343 ever again. But I did say, look for this space where both things can be true. I think there's probably turmoil. I think 343 probably will have to step back a little bit and invite more partners in. And yet I still think 343 is going to be the primary pipeline for creating Halo content and Master Chief stuff going forward. What do you think?
I mean, it's interesting because, excuse me, personally, I if you were to tell me, okay, what was the weakest part of Halo in its most recent iteration, it wasn't the single player stuff for me. The single player stuff for me was pretty competent and fine. I really liked it. Yeah, I thought it was fine. Like I for all the hate that 343 gets, I think they did deliver a really compelling campaign that made me actually excited for more of the Halo franchise after that franchise has really been dormant for a long period of time. And I think the conversation initially going into that Infinite coming out was, is Halo still relevant enough at all? Yeah. And I think 343 did the good job of building that campaign and making people, at least I, wanting to go back into that universe and still explore and see where some of the conversations are going to land. I think the biggest, issue and the roadblocker for a lot of fans was there just wasn't enough compelling content on the multiplayer side, which is the thing that they're most currently known for. And that's the reason why Halo has continued to be, to have some trouble, was they just didn't have enough content coming out of the funnel to be able to get that into players' hands in a way. I mean, it's just a hard thing, right? Game development is difficult. It is not easy. It's one of those things where, only the folks in those walls can tell you exactly what was going on. And even the folks who have spoken out already, it's been a lot of conversations that came from a long period of time of doing a game for a really long time. So you wind up seeing some of those things wind up coming and popping up of mismanagement and time changing in terms of development plans and things like that. It just sucks because it now has made 343 kind of this specter in the room when it comes to what they're hoping to do later on. And I don't know if the public sentiment has ruined the reputation of the company when they can potentially still do something great with that franchise. Like, I think that there's no reason why they can't do something really dope and fun. And Forge is a part of that conversation, too, that has come out and been fairly good and fairly well received, too.
Yeah, I think Halo's just in this weird position. It's inside Microsoft where they want it to be everything for them. They want it to be their marquee game. They also want it to be like this thing that can make a ton of money. Just make a bunch of money. So we're going to throw in when we put the multiplayer out, we're going to make sure it's got all of the microtransaction hooks in there that we could possibly get away with, and we're going to try to make as much money on this as possible. And I get that when you have a big thing that's successful, you do that. But if you look around, that's not what Nintendo and Sony do with their biggest games. Their biggest games, we saw God of War Ragnarok come out. They are not trying to shift that into some endless money-making factory. It is their marquee game, and that's it. It is just their marquee game. Breath of the Wild is just Nintendo's marquee game. That's it. And Halo is, it's going to be our marquee game, and we have to make sure that it is endlessly generating revenue. And I think Microsoft would be better served being like, listen, we should just focus on making our biggest game first, and then everything else regarding business models can be pushed off to the side. I think that's like a big hurdle for them to overcome mentally inside of Microsoft, and I don't know if they have the sort of strategic appreciation for pulling that off or not. The other side of it is that it's weird that, according to Jason Schreier, he posted this on Reset Era, that the single player campaign DLC that was supposed to be coming wasn't canceled. It was never actually in the works. That is weird to me, because it's like that. It sounds like because they don't think that it's can generate revenue. It's not cost effective. It's okay. So clearly you are putting this game in a situation where it's not fulfilling the possibilities here, and it all comes back once again to money. You're Microsoft. You got enough money. You have other ways that you're making money. Can we just let Halo maybe off the hook a little bit on being the thing that needs to get you in the black? It's frustrating.
I think it's a little bit of a couple of different things, and I'm happy you kind of talked about the comparison between the big three and how they're all kind of doing this. I think the thing that Nintendo and Sony still have in that conversation is that they have really big franchises, really big IPs that stick with a lot of players, and I think that they don't have the weight of being games as services or multiplayer games that a Halo would and continue to do. Like, I still think that and I talked about this years ago now, or a year ago, like before Halo Infinite was actually out in the wild, and I was like, look, when everybody was like, oh, this part, like the single player stuff got delayed, and I was like, look, the thing that they have to continue to nail is the multiplayer. Yes, I think a lot of people really will appreciate the fact that the story is continuing in that way. But if they don't nail the multiplayer, they're going to be in a big mess of trouble, because that is the thing that series is known for. As much as people want to talk about, all the layers of the lore of the campaign and stuff like that, I think it is still a fundamentally multiplayer game that, if you are thinking about trying to push out into 2023, you kind of have to monetize it in that way now. I just don't know if you can decouple those things. One, because I do think that players do kind of expect some of it. And if you do throw that amount of money into a franchise, and I do agree with you that like Microsoft as a whole needs to diversify some of that pie so that you can get more of those potential games, so that you get a hit or you get more folks in the funnel in that way. But I do think that like players have an expectation for a certain amount of content drip. The studio has to make all that content and figure out ways to satiate that need. And then you wind up saying, well, how do you price it? I think the biggest issue for all of that stuff was the pricing was off for a lot of it. It was really expensive to buy Halo stuff inside that game.
Yes, exactly.
And I think once you say that to people, you're setting a bad precedent if the content doesn't meet the amount of money that you're spending for it in terms of your expectations for what dope content is. So that's where I think that winds up laying. I don't know if Sony and Nintendo, if they do have a multiplayer game that's like that in the funnel, if that still wouldn't be a part of those conversations too.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Like, clearly, if you are building a game like Halo, it's going to have some sort of monetization, battle passes, all those things. I think that it's just the benefit you have of your Microsoft is let's let it grow first and figure out how to really make as much money from it later. And what they did is like, we got to make sure that this thing is super profitable right away, and let's charge as much as possible for every. And it's man, that was just one thing sort of spoiling the stew over there. It was just like one element at this point, and it's definitely not the only thing people are holding against Halo Infinite's multiplayer at this point. But I mean, kind of like wrapping this back around to the future of 343. Sure. Do you think that we get another mainline Halo directly from 343 here in the next couple of years, or is it going to be like a longer break?
I feel like the studio itself needs a longer break too. Like, I mean, they have gone through a fairly tumultuous kind of launch with this game, right? And development throughout most of it. I think probably most devs on those teams are like, I would like to work on something else if I could too, like try to figure out a good way to transition off of that big project into something else that would not necessarily be tied to that. Because there's a lot of baggage that goes along with that franchise, and there's a lot of hopes and dreams that get put on a studio when you are the ones who are carrying that torch for a very specific game. So If they do it, I think they would definitely want to take some time off of it and then maybe come back to it. But it would also be nice to see other folks kind of take it and see what they could do with it for the upcoming whatever next release is going to wind up being.
Yeah, and I always kind of think this with this series specifically. That certain affinity Halo Battle Royale thing could come out and could just blow up, and we could all forget that we felt like really negative emotions towards Halo in an instant. Or whatever. It's like, oh, it's the biggest thing in the world and everyone's playing it. That's always still possible.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move ahead. Sticking kind of with the same thing. Phil Spencer tells Xbox employees layoffs were, quote, painful. This comes from Andy Robinson of VGC. On Wednesday, Microsoft confirmed plans to lay off approximately 4.5% of the U.S. technology giant's 220,000 person workforce, a total of around 10,000 people. Eventually, this was confirmed to have affected the company's gaming divisions, in particular Halo developer 343 Industries, Bethesda Game Studios, and marketing for Microsoft Gaming. On Friday, Phil Spencer sent out a company-wide email obtained and published by Kotaku, in which he told employees the cuts would set it up for long-term success. Here's the quote. "This has been a difficult week across Microsoft and here inside our teams. Now that many of the one-on-one and team conversations have happened, I wanted to take a moment to reiterate the messages that you heard from your leaders. This is a challenging moment in our business, and this week's actions were painful choices. The gaming leadership team had to make decisions that we felt set us up for the long-term success of our products and business, but the individual results of those decisions are real. I know that hurts. Thank you for supporting our colleagues as they process these changes. Over the coming weeks, we will have many opportunities to connect and answer your questions, including the monthly gaming update next week for teams who attend that meeting. And I am in close contact with teams at ZeniMax to provide support." It kind of goes on like that mostly, but this is basically what you would expect to hear at this point from an email like that, when it's like, okay, now it's time to rally the troops. Now that we're, the reorganization has happened, people have lost their jobs. It's time to get back to work. Do you think that this is the kind of thing that Microsoft Gaming could just roll with, or do you think that morale is maybe significantly damaged for a significant period of time over there?
I don't know. It's hard to know. I mean, I think from a very human perspective, of course, people are hurting after that. Like, there's a lot of folks who across multiple studios and multiple, vectors and verticals of Xbox lost their jobs after hearing about so many folks in Amazon losing their jobs and Google losing their jobs and the tech space in general going through this really, terrible purge of human beings. It's also, on the other hand, like, I have been a part of many, many reorgs and many, corporate mergers and changeovers and things like that. And it's a weird thing to have an expectation for it at this point as a worker, at this part of my life, too. I hope that when the conversation happens internally, and I feel like with every conversation I've had with Phil Spencer and a lot of their C-suite folks, is that they do care about their workforce. And it does feel like they do have an actual appreciation for all the work that those folks do. I think there's a lot of conversation that instantly goes to well, yeah, folks got bonuses, so they're evil, terrible human beings. I think there's a miscommunication in terms of the way the economics usually works. And yeah, I do think that, sometimes those folks don't deserve that kind of money to be doing that kind of work, especially when the layoffs hit and you see all those kinds of monies being thrown around at the top and not really funneling down to the workers in that way. But I think and hope that the folks within that space feel like they're still doing good work. I hope that they feel like they are, contributing to what they are hoping to get done with their individual teams that kind of help build and make really dope experiences and games for all of us. It's just a hard time right now. And I don't know, as a person who has to deliver that news, what else you're supposed to say besides what he said in that meeting. So I don't know. It's hard. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in that position. That's all I can say. That's not an easy position to be in for anybody involved.
Yeah, some of the reports from Business Insider were saying that for many of the 10,000, apparently Microsoft was cutting off people that they thought were underperforming in their job roles. I mean, how they figure that stuff out, exactly what that looks like. Is that why it hit 343? They believe that 343 underperformed. I think there's externally feels like there's a lot of evidence for that, but I mean, do we really know? Regardless, this is a period where it's everyone's laying people off. So all these companies are trying to get away with it because they can. But also it does seem like we're going to go into Q4 like earnings season here, and we're going to hear probably call after call where these companies are saying that consumer spending was significantly down in over December, and when people thought like maybe that could like carry us through. Well, early reports are consumer spending was way down, so it sounds like these companies are just trying to set themselves up for what will likely be a lot of disappointing earnings calls, and they're going to be like, well, look, we already made big changes, we already made the cuts, so don't even worry about that. And it's you know, at a certain point as a worker, you're just caught in the crossfire there. And of course, these companies, like we said last time, can afford to keep these people on. Microsoft's making a ton of money. This is posturing. It is the kayfabe of hey, we have we sure we're making all this money, but we need to look to our investors as if we understand their emotions as our own, and that's the most important thing in the world. And if they are worried about the endless growth not happening, we need to be like, yes, oh baby, don't worry, we understand endless growth. We need to have that. That needs to be number one priority. Here's what we're doing to ensure that. We're going to slim down, then we're going to build back up. It's going to be better than ever, baby. And it's like, okay, it's gross from the outside as someone who's not an investor in these companies, who is not associated with people who invest in these companies, looking at this, like, you guys first get a room. This is disgusting. and two, you are not the most important people in the room here. There are the thousands of workers who actually make these things and actually build these things, and you would hope that they would be prioritized, but of course in the system they never are. I think that we are also at a point where people are going to see statements like this from Phil Spencer and mostly see through it. I mean, even a guy that I think a lot of people probably like working for, I don't know, maybe that's changed, but I think if people do like working for Phil Spencer, they're probably seeing through this and be like, we're not this team. We are not this family. I should be taking care of myself first, and because Microsoft's not going to do it. So I think this rallying cry is probably mostly going to fall on deaf ears, and the efforts they're going to need to do to improve morale inside of Microsoft Gaming is probably not going to start or finish here. It's probably, maybe it starts here, but they're going to have to do a lot more to make sure people feel good about working there, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like as a person who's gone through layoffs for long periods of time, when I've been unceremoniously cut for what feels like no reason, it's just a hard pill to swallow on the end of any worker who has to be at the end of that guillotine in that way. I wonder if this changes more public sentiment about Phil in that way, because I do think for the most part he's been a really, really stand-up guy who seems like he really gets it and understands the kind of human factor that goes along with it. I also feel like one of the conversations there is like, he's garnered a lot of really good energy around him towards players in that way too. And I wonder if this changes a little bit of that, which I don't, and even if you think about the kind of way it all kind of funnels down, I don't think he was the person either who was like,
well, clearly not,
I'm gonna hit the button and be like, all right, we got to cut all these people. I think that was more than likely a decision that came from above him as well, and then he has to be the messenger towards his vertical and his team. So I think that's also a thing to recognize in that part of the conversation too.
Yeah.
And it's just hard. I've been on both sides of that equation, not on the firing side, but on the bottom end of that. But it just hurts. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't want to. Maybe there's a reason this doesn't always happen, but I always just think of Satoru Iwata taking a big pay cut. The whole leadership team at Nintendo taking a pay cut when things are bad with the Wii U, and then him saying, like, I don't think people can make joyful games if they're worried about getting laid off, so we're not going to lay people off. And it's just, that worked. It worked for Nintendo. You would think, like, maybe try to replicate that. If you are being told from above, hey, we need to make cuts, and if you're Phil Spencer, if you have any power at all, you're like, well, I mean, listen, maybe we can make some cuts here first and save some money and keep many of these people on. I don't know, but maybe this is the excuse that he needed to reshuffle 343 or whatever. And if that's the case, I also think that's maybe a little chicken shit too. It's like if 343 is coming up short and you need to rework what that studio is, just that, if that's what's happened here, I think you need to just do that and not shroud it inside of these bigger layoffs and be like, well, I couldn't do anything about it. Again, that's speculation. I don't know, but it definitely feels that way to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I can't tell, right? I wish that we were flies on those walls when those conversations are happening in a real way, because it would be really interesting to see the machinations of how a large layoff kind of goes, and what's the kind of decision making. And the thing I do know is, like, in having had conversations with some folks about the way they think about not this particular layoff segment, but other ones that I've been a part of, was been like, there's an idea of when the overall and overarching conversation around the public health of the financial system feels like it's kind of moving in a negative way. Everyone constricts in ways that are unhelpful to humans, right? And it feels like that's the biggest part of the conversation. Not only because like Phil and Xbox are one layer of it, but there's been like almost 200,000 people who have lost their jobs since, late last year up until now, right? That's all a lot of different versions of these conversations that happen in that way. And it's happened in the creative space too, where, companies that we would talk to about like doing deals and stuff, they were like, oh, we don't have budget anymore for that stuff. They have budget because you see who they're paying to go do stuff. They just don't have budget for you anymore. And it's a different conversation that winds up changing that conversation. So I don't always want to, I always kind of walk lightly when it comes to the conversation about like who's at fault, because I feel like it's a conversation that we just don't have all the information about all the time.
Well, I mean, okay, yes, we know who's at fault. It's the system. That's the most frustrating part, is that no one chose this system. We all live in it. Right. And yet it is wielded against us so frequently. It is, and it so frequently hurts people who are at the bottommost parts of that system, or even up to the middle parts of the system. But it's like, man, I wish I could just like put a face to that system and like personify it and yell at it, but you can't. And that's absolutely like this most infuriating, quixotic part of being alive right now, is that we know the villain. It is this faceless, nameless system called capitalism. And I guess that is the name. So not nameless. We could call it capitalism. And what can we do about it? Who the hell knows? It's like we can keep criticizing it, and hopefully that builds up a swell to at least, at the very least, modify it, if not wholesale replace it.
I rock with that.
All right. Armored Core 6 is getting an out. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped the story here. Let me hit this one first. Jan, you don't have to skip that. Here we go. The Last of Us Part 1 sales jumped 238% after TV show launch. This comes from Christopher Dring at gamesindustry.biz. We have our first new number one in the UK box charts, and it is Nintendo with its turn-based strategy RPG Fire Emblem Engage. The title's launch sales are 31% lower than what its predecessor managed. That's Fire Emblem Three Houses in 2019. The new game has a more anime-style look to it. The graphics, which may have limited its Western appeal slightly. Also, these are just physical numbers. God, I feel like physical digital has shifted even since 2019. Right?
I would hope so at this point. Yeah, I would hope that people are going digital at this point. But yeah. That makes sense. I
think so. Yet even so, it is still the second biggest launch for the series in the UK, ahead of cult 3DS hit Fire Emblem Awakening. That means FIFA 23 dropped to second place after a 21% fall in sales week on week, while God of War Ragnarok is down a place to number 3 with a 26% drop. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe holds number 4 with a 3% sales increase week on week, because of course it does. It just never stops selling. While rounding out the top 5 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is down 2 places after a 29% sales slide. The biggest increase of the week is The Last of Us Part 1, which returns to the charts at number 20 with a 238% spike in sales week on week. The game has been boosted by the new TV series on the title. The PS4 version of the game, The Last of Us Remastered, also re-entered the charts at number 32, a 322% sales increase. So I think TV shows might be a good way to sell video games. Kyle, what do you think?
I mean, look, that was the best and smartest thing I saw during the first week's premiere was Naughty Dog Socials being like, if you want to try the demo, go on the store right now and go did it. And I was like, freaking smart. Like, again, it's one of those conversations about like, how do you, for as much as people have bemoaned The Last of Us as a series over the past 2 games, over the past, 10 years now at this point, it is still resonating as a story to most people with the reinvigorated kind of layer that you get from a TV show that's doing really well and is really good. and just really smart marketing from Sony and the rest of the team to say like, look, we know that this is basically a reverse tie-in, right? It's like you do it usually do it the other way around, where you like, you have the movie and then you just throw the game in there and you just like do the thing, but now you flip it and it works even better for what sales are.
It's so much better, right? The trying to turn a movie into a video game was never really actually worked all that frequently. In fact, it barely ever worked. This is having a much better hit right now. There are still stumbles. We can go back to Halo again. That Halo show did not help sell Halo because it wasn't a very good show.
Right.
This is a good show. People like that Cyberpunk anime a lot on Netflix. The Witcher show, people like that well enough for a Netflix show, and that really helped that game sell a ton. It had like its best year ever, other than its launch year, I think. Sony, this is exactly what they've been trying to do. I don't know if the Uncharted movie was as successful, but at the very least, it seems like their TV side of things is very much working. And of course, it doesn't hurt that it is a very well-regarded show and has the second best launch on HBO in the last 10 years and all that. So, of course, people are going to be going to look for stuff. But this is the advantage of being vertically integrated. It's the advantage of being able to like prep everything ahead of time and like know what you're doing and be like, okay, listen, we have a show coming. We have a team that can work on a remaster of the remaster, and people are going to be like, why? We don't need this. And boy, they think that. But once that show comes out, there's going to be a whole new audience that's going to be like, hey, where can I buy this? And what's the best version of it? And it turns out it is the $70 version that just came out, not the $10 version that you go get from the used game store. And it's like, oh boy, we're making a lot of money, right?
I mean, the other part of this is like looking at that listing of games that are doing well or had a little bit of a bounce back. Callisto Protocol had a bounce back after a sale.
Yes.
That means you need a Callisto Protocol TV show. Put it on right now. Get it on there so they can get those numbers up. I'm actually kind of happy for them because they had a rough kind of launch in terms of that in that respect. But
yeah, it feels like that game maybe has a chance if they update it, if they make some improvements, has a chance to like improve its stake over time, right?
I think it'll be a game that people will come back to, but I do think that with the Dead Space remake coming out fairly soon, I think that's going to eat a lot of its airspace in that way. And I do think if you were to, especially what some folks in the chat are talking about, Dead Space would probably make a much better TV show. I think it has more legs to it, literally, and has a lot more space that you'd kind of be able to do some fun stuff in it, but. It's gonna be really interesting to see, and I really wish the NPDs would really start just digging into digital sales. I think it would give a lot of
NPD tracks digital sales from companies that hand that data over. Not all companies do. That's what changed over the last couple of years. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's a pretty decent picture. They don't give us the numbers, but there's a pretty decent snapshot of actually what happens in the industry. Better than a lot of the like this is like just physical over in the UK. NPD does a pretty good job of tracking. It doesn't have any Nintendo digital numbers, but still.
Right.
And real quick, T-Money in chat says, I would play Callisto Protocol again if they added New Game Plus. Well, guess what? They just did.
It's coming.
They just announced it's coming. So happy for you. There you go. Get back into it. All right, moving along. Armored Core 6 hour-long presentation is set for the Taipei Game Show on February 3rd. This comes from Alex Coe at MP First. Fans looking for the next big info drop from Software's upcoming Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. You don't have to wait too much longer, as the studio has announced something planned for the Taipei Game Show. The Armored Core 6 presentation is set to go for 60 minutes and will feature an appearance from Armored Core series producer and promotional marketer Yasunori Ogura. It will air live on February 3rd at 2000 hours GMT, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. I am pretty excited about this, Ka. I want to really see what this game looks like. Sounds like they're ready to show it off already. I've heard conflicting things about whether this game's actually going to be ready for this year or not. This gives me some more confidence, though. They're going to show this thing off for an hour at the Taipei Game Show this early in the year. They still said it's coming out in 2023. How are you feeling about Armored Core 6?
I have no reference of any Armored Core anything. I've never played an Armored Core game, but I kept seeing how everybody was super hyped during the Game Awards, and I was like, oh, I guess I got to kind of pay attention to this, especially because so many folks who I appreciate their opinions on video games were really excited about it. So hearing that you're hyped for it, and I saw a couple other folks really excited for it, and I was like, all right, I got to maybe see and check this thing out. So now we'll have a 60-minute presentation. And that'll be pretty cool to be able to kind of like dig through and see what the kind of feature spec is going to wind up being on that game. I'll be looking at your feed a lot to see if you're really like, okay, that was a good thing. That was a good thing. All right, I don't know about that one. So it'll be good. I'll be taking the Jeff Grubb like thermometer on Armored Core when they talk about it.
I definitely want to see like how From's like modern From Softy it is. I don't think it's going to be super in that direction. I think it's going to be still a little bit like it's not going to be Armored Souls like that. Right. That was always the guess from a lot of fans is like they're going to make an Armored Souls, and I think that would have been really cool. But I honestly know how you pull that off. But it's like okay, even just a modern take on Armored Core with the resources and development knowledge that FromSoft has developed over the years. That is that's really promising, and I'm ready to see for myself actually what that ends up looking like. And I guess we're gonna get a chance February 3rd.
Ooh. Yeah.
Final update on the future of Marvel's Avengers. That's the name of a blog post from Crystal Dynamics where they write the following. After 2.5 years and introducing 12 of Earth's mightiest heroes, following update 2.8 on March 31st, 2023, we will no longer add new content or features to Marvel's Avengers. All official support for the game will end on September 30th, 2023. Even after official support ceases on September 30th, both single and multiplayer gameplay will continue to be available. Update 2.7, which added the Winter Soldier hero and Cloning Lab Omega level threat, is the last new content to be added to the game. No new cosmetics are coming to the marketplace, and all final balance updates will occur in Update 2.8 in March. God, this is the writing was on the wall. We knew this was going to happen eventually. I mean, everything ends eventually. Avengers always felt like we know that's going to end relatively soon. I think it outlived what I was expecting a little bit. And then when this game begins to shut down here, they are going to stop selling it digitally, they said, in September. But once that happens, if you own the game, they're going to give away all of the cosmetics in the game for free to everyone that's been playing if you own a copy. So it might be like a real good time to actually go in and play it. So I got my copies. I might be checking it out as that stuff happens. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that'll make me jump back in for one last time to go grab all the bits and get all those things together because I had some fun with it. I don't think it was an awful game, but it just didn't meet the expectations, I think, of fans or folks who really like that kind of grindy game. It also kind of goes back to that conversation about 343, right? It's like, what kinds of content are you offering up to players? Does it feel comprehensive? Does it feel like it's really talking to the player base in a way that feels smart?
Yeah, as Marino's chat says, or is it 2 versions of Hawkeye? Is that what you're offering?
Hey, you want both of those versions of Hawkeye. You know you do. You want those. You want those bracelets, those last bangles that you didn't get before. Everybody knows. Oh my goodness! But I hope we'll see. Like I think again, it's sad that this game is not going to have longer legs. I think this is one of those weird things too, where it's like, how do you mess up a Marvel game? And it's like not saying that they like messed it up, but saying that like the team like didn't get to fulfill the thing that they had hoped to make. So I wonder how history will talk about this game going down the line further down.
I think it's going to be a sort of mile marker for understanding what is possible with live service games. I think the promise of live service games to publishers, let's not talk about like what they can mean to gamers being the one single game, throw all that stuff out. What they mean to publishers is usually you could make a lot of them relatively cheap compared to a big modern AAA single player game. And then they have their potential for making revenue is infinite compared to the other option that I just mentioned. I remember I put like a question out on Twitter or something like, hey, what is the threshold that a publisher like EA looks for when they're greenlighting games? Like, what is the profit margin that they're looking for? And the answer to that question is 15%. But I remember Dave Lang got mad. He's like, no, it's infinite these days. And I'm like, listen, I'm not talking about live service games. He's like, why would you not make a live service game today? And it's like, that's how they look at it. But the issue with a game like Avengers is it is trying to be both. It clearly was trying to be both. And that makes it both incredibly expensive to produce, incredibly expensive to license the characters. And then you also need to spend all this money on content, which should be like, that's where you should be putting your money into a live service game, is making a lot of content, not all this other stuff where it's like, it's a big single player game and it's got big licensed characters. That like triples your cost or whatever. And it just was never, it couldn't work because there's so many options for people to go out and get all kinds of different live service games. And they are supposed to be like kind of disposable until one hits. And then the publisher can put all their money into it at that point.
Yeah.
I think Avengers is going to be like that hard lesson learned by one company, and all the rest of the industry will sort of look at it and be like, man, we are not going to try to do anything like that going forward. If we get a game like Avengers, it'll be like, maybe it plays like Avengers, maybe it has a similar structure, which really is just the Destiny structure at a certain point. It's like, yeah, you could do Destiny, but you have to build things up yourself, and you have to spend a lot of time kind of getting into a place where it's really good. And you kind of can't do that if you are sending a lot of money over to Disney to say, hey, can we keep using your characters? And I think that's going to be the lesson learned here.
Also, you have a shorter window of visibility to players these days. Like, if you're not really, really good out the gate, it's so much harder to get that goodwill back. And to have people give the patience for you to get your game good. That's also a part of that conversation too. It's like, it's just a harder space. Like when you think about what Destiny 1 did and how they worked their way through to get to Destiny 2 and how good Destiny 2 is now, that's like a long time to get that good. So yeah, we just live in different times now, and it's going to be interesting. I do want to see how Midnight Suns is doing in terms of licensed properties in that way. Yeah. Totally different gameplay structure, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works. And business model
and everything like that. Yeah. It's like you clearly like, okay, we are going to spend the money on the characters, so let's do a kind of game that can be budget friendly.
Yeah.
Little strategy game, like, yeah, that works. And it turns out it's a very good strategy game, so good for them.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here. A couple more stories. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty is CDPR's biggest budget DLC to date. So let's see, this comes from Chris Scullion at VGC. In an article by Polish financial newspaper Parkiet, CD Projekt Investor Relations Manager Marek Bugdol reportedly stated that the DLC would be the biggest in the studio's history in terms of budget. Bugdol also reportedly claimed that the studio was comfortable with the current state of the expansion's development. Here's a quote. We hope that the new adventures and characters will attract those who are already familiar with Cyberpunk and also encourage many new players to start playing in Night City. In an article by I'm sorry, now I'm just repeating myself again. My Control V apparently was going ham earlier today. I'm of two minds of this, Kyle. Like, oh, that's exciting. Part of me is ready to go back to Cyberpunk, especially for new content. The other side is like, yeah, I mean, it's more expensive because everything has to be more expensive than the last thing you made. Everything has to be bigger. Everything has to be look more expensive. And that goes right back to like, these games are just not sustainable. And you really, if you're like, okay, well, if we're making DLC for Cyberpunk, a game that like struggled out of the gate in terms of at least its critical reception, of course it did make a lot of money. You would still think, well, maybe it shouldn't be like the biggest thing. The Witcher stuff we did should have been bigger. Like, let's be a little bit more careful here. That's not really an option for them, right? It always had to be the biggest thing they were going to make, right?
I mean, with this IP, yeah, like to a certain extent, because it didn't do well right out the gate. They still had to try to figure out a way to kind of appease and get back into good graces of players. I do wonder when they say this is the biggest budget that kind of goes towards this thing, how much of that is just Idris Elba?
Idris Elba, yeah.
Idris Elba getting paid.
And Sasha Grey, they got Sasha Grey too.
Shout out to Sasha Grey, she's dope.
I hope Sasha's getting paid.
I hope so. I love her streams. Her streams are dope.
Yep, she's
great. She's super fun. It's one of those things where it was like, I wonder how much of all of that, but it also lets me kind of understand and hope that if they are going and saying this and messaging this, because I think Cyberpunk and their team over at CD Projekt Red, for as much as they didn't necessarily kind of like come through on the promise of what Cyberpunk 2077 was supposed to be initially. I feel like they've done a really good job over the past couple of past year or so and some change of like building that game back up into a really reasonable spot that plays fairly well and feels really good. I do wonder though if this is going to be a bigger shift in terms of any of the other stuff that they usually tout, right? Like, does this get a different graphics pass? Does this look different than the previous game? Does this look like, there was initial like early concept stuff that didn't look exactly like how the game that we got looked, right? And I think were they still shooting for that? Is that so aspirational to get to what that initial visual looked like? Because that is not exactly what we saw at the game that we wind up getting. So I wonder if they're even trying to figure out how to wow us to get us back into that world, and maybe we get something that's even better than what we initially got with the first part of the game.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. This is a chance for them to reset everything one last time with Cyberpunk, to be like, okay, we've done a lot of work, we've built a lot of goodwill back, a lot of people really like playing the game now. Now, with this DLC, we can repackage it and basically launch it for the final time. You're like, okay, now here's really Cyberpunk, the game you're going to be playing for years and years is always going to have this stuff in it. When people think back to it, it's going to be with this DLC in mind, in the same way that Blood and Wine is considered integral to The Witcher 3. So yeah, this is they understand what's at stake here. So of course they're putting a lot of time and effort and money into it. It makes sense. Although also I'm sure Idris Elba is getting that money too, for sure.
Oh, he's definitely getting that done.
Deserves it.
Yeah.
WWE 2K20 or 2K23, yes, has been officially confirmed for a March release. This comes from Chris Scullion at VGC. 2K has announced that WWE 2K23 will release for console and PC on March 17th, with those who purchase premium versions gaining access 3 days earlier on March 14th. As previously leaked, the game will feature John Cena on the cover of all 4 versions, and they're going to have a big mode that follows John Cena. I'm surprised this hasn't happened already, like where they did the big, oh, here's the showcase mode for John Cena. Well, now here it is. I'll get that. That sounds like a good time, Kyle. What do you think?
The showcase stuff was really good. The stuff they did with Rey Mysterio, and they kind of they pulled in the old video footage from all his WCW days and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really good. I was hoping that they were going to do more of these, and hoping that it wasn't going to be just game specific. I was hoping that this was going to be a kind of mode that they would update throughout the years and kind of have that be the mainstay. But if it's going to go into a new game, and it is John Cena's 20th year in the league, then it makes sense to give him his own game and give him the kind of kudos that he deserves as one of the most marketable superstars on the planet, and person who kind of carried them through an era for a big part of the WWE's existence. So yeah, he deserves it. I give him props.
Finally, here we have a Forspoken review roundup. Have you played any of this, Ka?
Yeah, I'm playing through it right now for review. Lots of thoughts about that game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, give me your quick pitch, because I started it. I got a handful of other games that are either out or did just come out. I started playing Forspoken. I didn't immediately get hooked by it. I didn't get immediately repulsed by it either. I'm kind of waiting for it to start, and then I started playing Fire Emblem Engage and just fell in love immediately with that. Such a good game. I'll talk about that more in the Bombcast. Everybody will probably do a quick look for Forspoken as well. But maybe you've played a little bit more. How are you feeling about it?
I'm probably maybe 2 or 3 chapters in at this point, and feeling kind of up and down about it. I feel like it's an interesting idea of a game that I don't feel like the mechanics are meeting that idea. It feels like there's some clunkiness to the way that character kind of just moves around the space that I wouldn't expect for a game that really wants to talk about parkour as being a main mechanic of propulsion and moving you through a space. The biggest thing I think that everyone is going to come away from with this game is the main character of Frey. I think there's going to be a conversation about which characters are the most annoying in 2023. Is it Frey, or is it the guns from High on Life? It's going to be a battle of the annoying. And as a New Yorker, she is not a The Yorker. That character does not come across as a New Yorker in any form or fashion.
That's incredible. Okay.
The characters that she meets in the game, no spoilers, but there's a moment in the beginning of the story that kind of turns her character into something a little bit different. Not even the mystical, going from New York kid to the kid in this far off land, but the street punks don't even feel like New York kids.
Man.
I was are you did you try to fight me after you just came out of a Prada store? What is this fight? Why are you trying to beef with me, and you are the richest looking kids on the planet with this other kid who looked like she just came out of Gilmore Girls talking crap?
Yeah, that scene, they look way too hip.
You're too posh.
Yeah.
You're way too posh to be trying to stick me up for my dough.
It's like an H&M ad on the wall came alive and attacked me. It was so weird.
I was like, yo, who are these Abercrombie and Fitch mofos trying to fight me right now? And I'm like, yo, that's not the way this works on any block in New York. I was like, this is so anti-New York but it feels like it feels like they tried to cram another Final Fantasy open world game into the buying space and retell it through this character and through this IP. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like it feels very akin to a Final Fantasy open world game, not only in just the way that you have fights, but even just like styling of the UI and some of the stuff of like, like small things like damage numbers over your head. It's not a thing that you would dock a game for points, but it's like the stylistic changes and decisions in that game feel like they were cribbed from something else, and it doesn't feel cool enough to continue to kind of keep my time. I'm fighting my way through it. And hoping that it gets a little bit better, but it hasn't hit that like corner yet where you're like, oh, now I feel like I'm hooked into this conversation. Yeah. And also the way that they do the music part is killing me. There's this orchestral theme that goes through the most of the game, and that thing is on like constant repeat. It's like this one just like soaring voice that sings this thing, and it's just like, oh my God, if I hear that one more time, I'm going to try to jump off this bridge. I don't want to hear it anymore. I want to turn it off, but I also don't want to turn off any other game music because it might be cool. And I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, maybe we'll figure it out.
Oh, they're killing me.
It feels pretty cheap to me. And again, I'm very, very early, but it's not like, the dialogue can be sort of embarrassing sometimes, but mostly it is like, someone will speak a line and there will be that weird pause. It's like there's no timing there. So even if like the writing was very on point, it would feel sort of stilted and stiff. And it's like, well, it's the writing's only, and then on top of that, it is also very stiff. And it's just like, this feels like maybe a slightly more expensive The Quiet Man sometimes. It's very strange because it's supposed to be like one of the Final Fantasy teams who are coming in and working on this. And like you said, it feels very connected to that series. Let's get into some of the reviews here. GameSpot gave it a 5 out of 10. This comes from Jordan Ramey. Forspoken is a tricky game to recommend. The lore of its world is interesting, but delivered in a stilted expository manner, and the freeing sensation of taking off across the landscape in a magically propelled sprint is sullied by knowledge that there's nowhere to go or anything fun to do. Combat is visually impressive, but not all that engaging, and the excellent sound design and the catchy musical score are regularly undermined by unfunny quips and an unlikable protagonist. Game Informer gave it a 75 out of 100. Forspoken's story and combat failed to reach the heights of its movement and exploration, but thankfully those two latter elements make up most of the experience. I sprinted, often literally, through the campaign in about 15 hours, and now I have a large world filled with nooks and crannies I'm eager to run through and explore. Inverse gave it a 7 out of 10. It's abundantly clear that Forspoken's story and setting are MacGyvered together by a committee of writers, but running around Athia is so much fun that it's easy to overlook a lot of its shortcomings. You know what this reminds me of? That Sonic game. What was the Sonic Frontiers? It sounds like Sonic Frontiers, where it's fun to run around and explore, and that's about it. And
it does have a lot of the nooks and crannies stuff. Like, you're just like, oh, okay. Like, I like the fact that the map is so expansive. You can kind of see, like, oh, we're going to go into over in that corner. We haven't been over there yet. And you run into like semi-interesting fights in some of those spaces there. It's just a matter of like, when you're going through all of those things, you're getting these unfunny quips that don't land. And like, I think the era of the angsty teenager in games, I think I'm past that. Like, Atreus annoyed the hell out of me. Frey annoys the hell out of me. I feel like I finally hit my get off the lawn conversation with me as a game player. I'm like, yo, shut up.
Yep.
I don't want you to talk to me. I want you to go fight the monsters, and I want you to go sound cool while you do it, because a lot of you just sound nerdy. I mean,
the narrating what you're doing has never been worse than in this game. Like, her just talking about what she's doing. It's like, what? No one talks like this, and it's so weird.
And she's just a jerk to everybody, which is the part that is really frustrating to me. Anyway,
I mean, maybe that's part of the arc. I get it, but it's like, no, I have to spend time with this character. I should like them, I think. Like, that gaming is not necessarily the kind of thing where you can have like, I'm House and I'm the smartest doctor and I'm unlikable, and it's like, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, that character is going to get himself into situations, and it's fun to like see him clash against other people. It's not how it works in games. We need to like the people we're playing as, usually, I would think, other than Wario, who's just a monster. We're allowed to not like him. Let's see, Inverse gave it a 7, Variety gave it a 70 out of 100, IGN 6 out of 10, Attack of the Fanboy 5 out of 10. All the dinos provided this quote from Polygon. I'll read this, and then we'll get to the poll.
Yeah.
A depiction of New York that, even to a non-New Yorker like myself, feels less like New York and more like what an AI what an AI that has been fed Law and Order reruns and Tommy Wiseau's The Room would produce. It's like, oh boy, okay. That's what we're doing.
It is very much the Transplants version of New York.
Yes, that's what it definitely feels like. All right, well, there's Drake's Gold PSP. Let's get off of there.
Yeah.
The poll from Friday, Are you going to get Forspoken tomorrow? I actually didn't ask this on Friday. I had to delete my tweet because there was a mistake in there, let's say. Are you going to get Forspoken tomorrow? Yes, 5.4%. No, 94.6%.
Ouch.
Ouch.
Gosh dang.
Dang it. That's a rough one.
GMS Morning's crew is harsh on it.
People are not feeling it. Hey, I mean, listen, if you don't want to spend the $70 on it, I got good news for you about what's going to happen to that price in a couple of weeks. So just hold tight, everybody. Hold tight. Maybe try it out. We'll try it out a different time. All right, I got another poll that we're going to ask for the Wednesday show. In the meantime, though, while I get that posted, the Spawnies, remind people when they can watch that, and then tell people what's going on with you otherwise.
Yeah, SpawnOnMe has hit its 10th year in the podcasting game. I can still consider us the premier podcast spotlighting people of color in the video game industry. And we have an award show that's dropping on January 30th at 6 p.m. PST. You can come watch us at twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe. We'll be on the front page of Twitch. We're sponsored by Twitch and Xbox this year, and the foundation of our Game of the Year show is to spotlight some of the names that you might not have heard before when you're going through and looking at the credits and you're like, who is that? Who is that person? We're trying to uncover some of the folks that don't get the spotlight in the underrepresented and underrepresented groups of game developers in that space. So when you see our show, you may see some acceptance speeches from folks you may not have seen before, which is going to be really fun. There's some dope music coming through. It'll be me and Rihanna Manuel Pena rocking the show again for the second year. And I think we have something pretty fun that comes across in our show that you might not see in other award shows. So I hope you all come through. Come watch it and come hang out with us, and then and give some love. So come follow us at SpawnOnMe on Twitter, at Kahlief Adams on Twitter, and we'll definitely come see you and hang out with us in the chat and rock.
I'll be watching. I can't wait. The new poll is Avengers going to scare major publishers away from making some live service games? Yes, no. Feel free to drop your answer there on Twitter. You can find it by going to the hashtag GameMessMornings. So look out for that. Thank you so much for spending time with me talking about video games today. I really appreciate it, man.
Much love to you, fan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy we had a chance to finally hang out and rock again on Game Mess Morning. So shout out to everybody in the GB community, man. I'd love to y'all. You know, I love you all very, very much. And it's also good to see you all rocking with us, too.
Echoing that, you're all the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.